Hello everyone, right, welcome to today's stream. Really pleased today to be joined by César. He's an activist based in Texas, and he commented recently on one of my posts because I did a post, I can't remember, it was maybe 1 or 2 months back, talking about the dropout rate in the animal rights movement. And we were just exploring some reasons why that was, and César, made a pretty spicy comment on the post just saying that he thinks that vegans who quit activism are immoral. So not just morally neutral. This isn't just like it's something where it's like, damn, it's sad that you've dropped out of activism, but it's not some kind of huge moral obligation or whatever. Caesar specifically said that it's immoral to do so, and I really want to get into these points today and explore this because it is such a shame that there has been kind of a dropout rate. And whether you agree with this point or not, I hope you find this a good stream to listen to, and I hope you find it an important stream as well, because this is bad. What's happening? It is bad that there has been a dropout recently that we've noticed. So please feel free to comment there, those watching. We'll try and answer some comments as they come in. If you want to support my activism with a donation via the super chat, you can do that. That gets a guaranteed answer, but we'll try and answer other comments and stuff as they come in. Cesar, please just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of activism that you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, of course. I like to do a lot of outreach just to see what the popular commentary is. I do protesting every once in a while. I'll join different kind of groups. Online activism, which is really important as well. You can get your message out there with very little courage. It doesn't take that much courage. You just post and you let them comment. If you don't feel like responding, you don't have to. You can just throw the truth out there and let them argue with themselves. So I do things like that.
Cool. Now, what are we considering here to be activism? Because when I was posting about the run up to this stream, I was getting inboxes and stuff, and people were saying, "Well, I know an organizer in my group, and they had to quit due to mental health and stuff like that." And I was saying stuff like, "Right, but I assume they're still like posting on social media and stuff like that." And they said, "Well, yeah, they're still doing that." And I was like, "Well, that's fine. That still counts as activism." My deal with activism is you can do activism in the digital age. You can do activism from home. So street activism and stuff and direct action is great. But you can also do social media activism and stuff like that. So I'm even considering stuff like petitions, activism,
Yeah,
stickering,
of course.
leafleting, writing on stuff in chalk. So just before we start, are you considering all those things forms of activism as
Yeah,
well?
yeah, those are all valid forms of activism. You're a voice for the animals. And before we jump any further, I just want to say, for the people watching, no matter how courageous, no matter how brave you are going to burn out. It's going to happen. But this is what I'm here to tell you, that it is your responsibility to get back to it. You're responsible for your own emotions, and you better find a way to get back to it, because the animals' lives depend on it. And we can go from there.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Well, that's good because I think a lot of people coming into this stream, they might have thought that you were being some kind of dick or something by saying people
Right.
who quit just because they no longer do street activism, whatever, but they're active in other ways. So you're not an activism shamer in that regard, in that you
Yeah.
find all forms of activism valid, right? So it's not like you're coming into this saying you are not an activist because you are now
Mhm.
just doing like petition signing, or you are not an activist because you're just doing chalking and stuff like that.
That's
You're
right.
still considering those people activists, which is awesome, right?
I am, yeah. And that's the thing. Like you have to assess what you're good at, your strengths, your weaknesses. You have to assess that. Some things are
Yeah.
going to be good for you. Some things are not going to be good for you. But just being safe in your little corner of your room, that's not. You're not trying your best. You got to hold yourself to a higher standard than just like a regular normie sleepwalker.
Now, have you, Caesar, noticed the dropout rate that I was talking? Because it was on a post I was talking. I think when you commented that vegans who quit activism are immoral, I think it was
Mhm.
on a post where I was talking about the dropout rate. Right? Have you noticed this dropout rate that I'm speaking about?
100%. And I've given this comparison in the past, which is, I think it's bad, but it's kind of fair with like the Twilight vampires, whenever they initially become vampires, they're like really strong. They're very passionate. They want to be out there, and this is what activists are. They start with a really big passion, and then it burns out, and it lasts. Typically it lasts like a year or so it seems.
And what do you think are what do you think are the main reasons or excuses, I guess, that people are dropping out of activism? What do you think is happening here?
Well, maybe they think of it. They probably have really high expectations of themselves. They think that they are going to change every single person. Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why people quit. I mean, obviously, you're going to get a lot of people are going to think of you as weird, for standing up against something that's normal and ethical in our society.
Mm-hmm.
It's ethical, to kill these animals and torture them. And this is where I differentiate, which is a very important thing that I want to talk to these people when they think that I'm just being a dick. But it's ethical because that's the standard that society is going by. So to people in the street, people think that it's okay to do it, and versus like moral and immoral, I just find them as interchangeable with right and wrong, versus a standard that society has, which would be ethical and non-ethical, which is like why I never call myself like a ethical vegan, because I'm not vegan because others are doing right. I'm just doing it because that is what is right. It's right not to harm these animals. It's right to speak up for these animals, try to help them.
So do you think it's a case then that a lot of vegans think that it's going to be some kind of easy ride, and then they start doing activism and they realize it's not an easy ride, and then suddenly they just quit because they were like, damn, well, this whole activism game isn't for me after all. I thought it was just going to be all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, and it's just really important for people to know that it's just a matter of time before it happens. That's something you have to keep in the back of your mind, and you want to feel safe, like I said before. But it's like you have to put yourself out there, no matter how uncomfortable it is, because you are part of this privileged species in this moment in time where nobody's forcing you to do things. Like, you're free. If you're in a first world country, you're free, and you should be using that privilege to speak up.
Have you burnt out before, or have you thought about quitting activism before? And if so, how did you deal with it?
So never thought about quitting, and I don't think about I'm ever going to quit. And of course, burnout. People watching this right now, you might agree with my stance. You probably are burned out. You can tell whenever you're around these carnists. When they say something stupid, whenever somebody else and you're before your activism life, you just be like, okay, cool, whatever. But now it pisses you off so much, right? You're very angry at these people because they may be doing something silly, and you are burned out, you are. But it's like I said in the beginning of this video, it's your responsibility to do something that brings you joy back in your life, And I felt guilty before for doing things that I like, because I'm like, man, I could be using this time to speak about the animals, but here I am being selfish. But it's not, because you want to go for the long run, and which is what I plan to do. I'm in this for life. And as for guilty, I feel guilty for the animals that I harmed in the past, and that's what keeps me motivated. And I know there's people out there who have been vegan for since birth, maybe for religious reasons, and they've probably never hurt an animal intentionally. But I know I did. I know a lot of us vegans did, and that's who I owe my work to.
We've got a comment here from someone watching the stream. They're taking contention with when you said that we're free in a first world country because we have censorship laws and stuff like that. What would you say to that comment there?
Yeah, I mean, people are free to try to censor you. I mean, when I go out there in the public, there's always policemen right there trying to tell me that I'm doing something wrong, tell me to get out because it's a private event. I've had that happen just recently. And I'm like, hey, tell me I'm doing something illegal, and I'll leave. And I just stick to my words, and I just stay there. They can try to censor me, but the truth is out there, and you should never try to stop pushing it out there.
Yeah, and I just want to respond to this comment as well. It's like, look, okay, it's not perfect, the society that we live in. We're not perfect free. Of course, there's always going to be some kind of restraint on what we do. Mm-hmm. We have laws and blah, blah, blah. But compared to the animals being holocausted right now, of course we're free. It's a crazy difference, right? We definitely are the privileged species in this regard. as César said. So, all right, let's get into this now then. Why did you comment then that it was specifically immoral to quit doing activism? We're not talking, by the way, I just want to clarify before we start, we're not just talking about taking breaks here, right?
Right.
Do you support taking breaks and like needed breaks?
Of course, man.
Okay, so that's good to clarify for anyone watching in the stream as well, because people, I did get a few comments about that going in as well. People are saying, sometimes people need to take breaks, and I'm like, look, I don't think César was talking about breaks here. I'm talking about people who just quit and literally do nothing, right? Now, obviously, it is sad, it's upsetting, it's disappointing when we see other vegans do that. Why was it, though, that you said specifically that is immoral? Not just morally neutral, but, these people are still vegan. They're not buying any animal products. They're not funding the animal holocaust. Why is it immoral that they've just quit activism?
So again, the immoral word just means wrong. Why is it wrong? And here's the thing that I have in my Instagram. Like, I don't think I say much, but I just have a link to Earthlings. And there's a very strong quote in there in the beginning, and it says, we won't remember the words of our enemies, but we will remember the silence of our friends. Right? So we always, like some vegans, they say, friends, not food. Those animals are not our friends, but we are their friends whenever you're an activist. And I'll just put this in human context. Whenever you hang around with like some friends of yours and like they let you do something stupid or ridiculous, like let you get shit-faced, etc., and you do something stupid each time, and they let you do this. It's a very common comment to say, with friends like those, who needs enemies, right? So these silent vegans, the people who are choosing now to be silent because, I don't know, they are bothering somebody, or they think their people are dropping out from their life, and they're like, oh man, I gotta stop, I gotta silence myself. Your action is now with the side of the oppressor. That person who had that quote in Earthlings, Martin Luther King Jr., he has a lot of famous quotes about justice, right? He has tons of quotes about the people who choose to be neutral, the people who choose to be indifferent, the people who choose to be, people who choose not to care. You're siding with the oppressor now. So that's why it's immoral for somebody who's an activist and then they just quit. So to me, it just tells me that, that's just like a costume that you were wearing. It wasn't really a principle important in your life, an important value. It was just a badge. Right? It was just a badge that you wanted to wear. You wanted to be called an activist. And with the same badge, it comes along that they want to wear this other badge called the burnout badge. They want to keep telling people, like, oh yeah, like I'm burned out. With that, it's like when you want attention, you tell the same story to different people. And it's like they're telling the same story about them being burned out. Just, I don't know if they're looking for sympathy. I don't know what they're looking for exactly. But it's never like, oh yeah, I'm searching for something to take that void, that darkness that I come across. In the beginning I said, no matter who you are, how courageous and strong you are, you're gonna burn out. Because you are, like you asked me if I've ever been burned out. Yeah, man, I've been burned out, and I'm sure you have as well. You deal with all this, not just ignorance. You deal with the arrogance. You deal with the apathy from the passerbys. It's like the same as online activism. People say some snarky comments, but then you find out people do that shit in real life too.
Yeah.
They're cowards. They're cowards. They just walk by. They say those comments and they just walk by. Like, I got that vegan. I got him.
Now, you've made some very powerful points there, especially about the quotes about, we'll not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends, and also about how you can say in certain situations with friends like those, who needs enemies.
Yeah.
Would you go as far as to say that vegans who quit activism are enemies of the animals, or would you just say they're still ultimately on the animal's side, but they're helping the enemy in some way? Oh, and just before you speak, César, just come a bit closer to your computer, by the way, so your mic is a bit louder.
We good? We're better here?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah, cool.
Okay, what was your question? I'm sorry.
So the question was, do you think that those activists, those vegans who quit activism, do you think that they are enemies of the animals? Would you go as far as to say that? Or would you just say they're still on the same side of the animals, but they're just kind of helping the enemy out in some way?
Okay, so to me, an activist is a very special kind of vegan, right? An animal rights activist who's vegan. They, if they were to just explore their mind, if they were just explore their own head, to their initial response to this extreme injustice, right? I've mentioned that there's a lot of quotes about injustice, but what we're dealing here with is extreme injustice because it's legal, because it's ethical to kill animals and eat them and wear them and use them, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're on the side of the oppressors. They're choosing to be on the side of the oppressors. There's no such thing as neutral when there's extreme injustice.
Is there a counter argument though there that if we take that mantra, mm-hmm. does that not play into the kind of intersection? Because I know you, like me, you're not an intersectional, right?
I think I'll just clarify real quick on that. I think everything is connected. Yes, everything is connected, but because we're dealing with extreme injustice, and this is ethical to do to these animals, harm them, torture them, torment them, because that is an extreme injustice. We have responsibility to be speciesist and just focus on the animals because they are the ones who need the most protection right now, right? And I get what you're coming. I get what you're coming with. Shouldn't I be speaking up for human injustices, right?
Right, you knew where I was going to go with this, right? So I could just be like, so César, you are the enemy of gay people in Saudi Arabia because you are not posting about the gay executions in Saudi Arabia. So, like, what would you say to that, going by the logic you're using at the moment?
Yeah, and that's a fair logic, and I'll bring it back again. The most urgent thing, and I guess because you say I'm not in Saudi Arabia, I'm not part of the LGBTQ identity, then it's not urgent to me because of that. Like, so then I am immoral because I'm not speaking upon them, right? But people who are doing evil things to humans or evil things just in general like that, they know that they are doing wrong. Versus people who are eating animals, they're sleepwalkers. You want a perfect example of a sleepwalker? You go to the zoo. It's lots of loving families trying to show their children, love for animals, but they're sleepwalkers. They have no idea. They buy the lie about, oh, these animals are here for X reason, right? Whatever the zoo is lying to them about. But these animals are imprisoned, right? So that's why I'm saying that, because people are sleepwalkers. They think they are good people. And I'm sure that people who are harming others are not thinking of themselves like they are good people. I'll bring an example that's like happening here in the United States. It's human trafficking. That happens all the fucking time. Why am I not speaking up against that? The same reason, because the people who are doing it, they are doing clandestine activity. They already know that it is wrong. And versus the people, just the sheer scale of what's happening to these animals, it's a global Holocaust, and people think nothing of it. They're very indifferent about it.
We've got a question here. Thank you for the super chat and the donation to my activism, Sherry. Sherry says, César, why do you think vegans support other causes such as BLM or gay rights more than the most oppressed individuals on the planet? Is it fair?
Why do you think vegans support other causes such as the BLM or gay rights more than the most oppressed individuals? Top reason would probably be because they belong to one of those groups. I would say that. Another reason would be probably to have somebody who is, gay in their life, who they think they need more respect than they are getting right now. But those groups, those minorities, they're not being taken. They're not being tormented just because of, there might be racist ass people. I'm here in Texas where people are very racist in the small towns, but they're not kidnapping their kids. They're not forcing them to have children.
And I just want to state as well, not that we should ever need to state this, but there are always people out there who will use identity politics. Before anyone says, privileged white males, speaking about this, you're ethnic minority yourself, right, César? So what's your ethnic background?
Mexican.
Okay, so you're Mexican background. And you say there are racists and stuff about it in the state where you are in Texas. But even in this case, you are saying that it's still a bigger fight to fight for animal liberation. Why would you say that, like, as an ethnic minority? Like, what makes you say that?
Well, just like we're talking about the dropout rates,
Yeah.
we're already a very tiny minority. You look at all these vegan groups, online vegan groups, groups like Meetup, potluck groups, things like that, etc. Running groups. They don't want to hear anything about activism. They don't want to hear anything about that. They think of it as just angry people, right? They
Yeah.
shut you up. They would rather side with the oppressor. They would be like, oh, like it's okay to have these people introduced to our vegan group if they're animal abusers currently, just so that they can see how normal we are, whatever that means. It's like, why should we try to convince somebody that you will be content? You will be content not being an animal abuser. And they don't want to talk about activism. Nobody does. So because of that, because there's a very tiny portion of us who want to speak up for the animals, who have the courage to do so.
I also want to just reiterate here, in America, especially where you are, the anti-racism push is gigantic. Like, it's flipped the other way now. We're seeing on the in the college campuses and stuff in the US, we're now seeing this like ridiculous bullshit where it's like, white people will not be allowed in this dormitory, or you have to inform the campus if you're going to bring a white friend along or something like that. So this, like, the whole anti-racism stuff, anti-sexism, whatever it is, especially in our Western culture where we live, this is a huge push now. Like, this is a gigantic drive. So it's like, it's insane to me when people say we should like prioritize these like human issues, when this has been massively prioritized to the extent that it's gone, in many cases, so far, like in the US college campuses and stuff, that, we're seeing stupid stuff like you have to inform the college if you bring a white friend along to the dormitories and stuff. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see how, like, the human rights issues are clearly just getting a massive spotlight compared to animal rights issues?
Of course, man. It's part of that human supremacism. And just to talk about colleges, I hate taking my TV out there with slaughter footage to colleges. I hate talking to college students. I just hate it. Like, I'd rather talk to a normie, even like one of those people who cosplay cowboys. They walk around with their hats, with their cowskin boots. I'd rather talk to somebody like that than somebody from college. And I always say this, guy, our cubes in Austin, not our cubes, but the cubes for AV, they're generally in the college section. Sometimes, like, every once in a while, I'll go by there, and it's always the same kind of attitude they have. They want to say that they are, just broke college students, like, as if that has any bearing onto, like, respecting animals. Because knowing that there's people out there who are very unfortunate, who don't have a home, they're living out in the streets, and they choose to be vegan. They choose to care for animals. They choose to not turn those animals into poop, So I just say those colleges, campuses, when they do want to shut me up, they want to shut my message up with, like, yo, what about racism? What about like all these other things that are like, yo, like, I'm not doing that. You're not doing that. I'm here to hold you accountable for this.
Yes.
Which is another point that I want to talk about. Like, I bring the slaughter footage because it gives the person a great foundation to their rationale, to their values that they're going to hold in the future. They will associate non-veganism with being a dick to these animals when they're being, having their skin peeled off of their head, which is what I show. Like, I show the standard slaughter footage.
Are you finding that the college campus students are more or less receptive to the vegan message than the people walking around with the cowboy hats in Texas?
So, I mean, they're to me, like I just call them sleepwalkers. They don't want to be doing evil. When they're called out, they're very defensive because of that. First off, they don't think they're doing evil to these animals.
Just clarify, César, who are they? The college campus students or the cowboys?
Carnist, people who are eating animals. Yeah. But yes, to me, they're the same person. A cowboy who hurts animals, who hurts cows personally in his personal life, they're the same as somebody who eats them. They're the exact same person to the animal, because I look through this injustice through the animal's eyes, which is why I say it's immoral, it's wrong. Because to those animals, it is wrong that you chose to be silent.
But what I'm asking is, are you finding that the college campus students are more receptive or less receptive to the message?
Okay, here's the thing with college students. They want to show off how smart they are, right? And I hate using big words. I hate wasting my big words, man. I just want it straight to the point. But they want to make it a point that they are so fucking smart. That's what they want to do. They don't like. I'm not saying Cowboys are better. I don't fucking think that I'm saying that because I'm not. Like I said, they are the same people to me. But I just hate dealing with people who want to show how smart they are when I'm just showing you the truth.
Yeah, because I'm getting different. I'm getting different takes, especially from those in America. But it seems to depend on what kind of college campus you're in and what kind of state you're in. Because what I'm hearing now is that actually some of the conservative based college campuses, the students are more receptive and more open minded to the message, and those in the more like progressive, quote unquote, woke states and stuff, the students are actually worse. Have you noticed anything like that, or do you think they're generally like?
They're generally the same. It's the
Yeah.
same type of people. College, you have this life plan kind of planned out, and so here in Texas, we have UT here in Austin, where people try to be hipsters and hippies and more liberal, and it's known for being that. It's Austin. It's keep Austin weird. And you go down the street to Texas A&M, to where like they're like a bunch of ranch people. They're still, to me, they're still the same. And I know that Earthling Ed came down here to Texas. He had like a little tour, and
Yeah.
you'll see it on his videos. Like the college people are the same. Like they all think that they're so fucking smart, right?
Yeah. Now, do you think that there's any exceptions with people who quit activism? Are there any, like you say, generally, if someone quits activism, they're immoral. Are there exceptions to this rule? Is there a vegan who could quit activism? I'm not talking about taking a break. I'm talking about quit, and you would consider them to be not immoral for that?
Okay, so again, it's they are immoral. You're saying, right? So it's an immoral thing to do,
Yeah.
right? So it's an immoral thing to do, to be silent, to be on the side of the oppressor. Yeah, I think it's bad. I don't think that there's ever enough work that you're gonna do where you can just call it quits. Like I said earlier, it's either part of your principles or it's not. Even if your your online presence, you have a very big online presence and your video gets 40 million views, like you don't just quit, even though your video's doing wonders, making people activists, which is more than many can say. Making somebody an activist is probably harder than making someone stop abusing animals. But no, like, okay, so if we think about an example of somebody who quits veganism, right? We think of them the same way. Like they are terrible people because they saw the darkness and then they went to the light and then now they're back to darkness. It's the same thing with vegan activists. They know that the appropriate response to what's going on to these animals is to be a voice. So if they just explore their initial thoughts, that first response that they had to get active, it's still going to be there. It's actually probably harder for you to ignore what's going on now. So why would you do that to yourself?
I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm clear on what you're saying though, as to whether there are exceptions to the rule.
No.
So you're just okay. All right, I'm going to press you a bit then here.
Even if you're Gary,
that's what I was gonna. You knew where I was going with this.
Yeah, even if you're him, and he knows it too. He probably does. Like I don't know much about his life, but I'm sure that he's doing things out there. Maybe he just doesn't want to have a big online presence. And I always think about these people who were in the front lines, as in like the face, right? Like I'm not saying like behind the scenes, like people who are liberating animals, breaking into things like that. I'm talking about the people who are the face, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether they deserve to be the face or not. They, like, a lot of people quit, and you think about these other people who don't quit, and you can admire that they don't quit. You like Earthling Ed, he's still going strong. Joey Carpstrong, he's still going out to the public doing things like that, and they don't quit. But others, like, they just quit. Like, so you think about, like, is it like the big meat and cheese and milk industries getting to them, threatening them? Like, what's going on? So that's why you admire somebody who goes on and is truthful with the message.
How many activists, like, you're mainly doing activism with AV, right?
No, I don't really. I have like a handful of AV cubes under my
Hmm.
belt, just like 10 maybe. But I do a lot of my own things. I do a lot of undercover filming, protests.
Yeah.
Uh,
And how many of your sort of activist pals over the years would you say have just totally quit?
Plenty, more, fucking plenty, man.
What would you say to those people if they were watching the stream now?
I tell them, get back on it. You've had enough break.
Yeah.
You've had enough. And like I said, you find something that brings you joy. Whatever it is, whether it's for me, what I really love doing is going hiking out of the nature, even if it's like me by myself. Like I'm out there, I'm enjoying it. Like I'm nature. I'm out there and it recharges me. I know my partner, she loves going to sanctuaries when she's feeling burned out. Just seeing those animals that you're speaking up for, that really charges her up. And I'm sure it would a lot of people. It might not work for everybody, but like I said, you have that responsibility to find what recharges you. So I would tell those people who quit, hey, get back on it, because I know there's people that I'm sure you're aware of. They just straight up delete all of their animal rights work. They just delete it, and they become this whole other persona, and they wear this other costume, and it's all about them now.
Yeah, I've seen this happen. I don't know if they're still being active in other ways that we don't know about, but you've described that very well there. There do seem to be a few. I'm not going to name names, but
Yeah,
there's people like on Facebook or Instagram, whatever, and their account just sort of turns into being about something else, and it's like, hang on, this person just isn't posting about animal rights at all anymore. Like, and you kind of hope that they are doing something, right? Do you believe that those people are probably still doing something, or do you think those people, where often we see that they've just turned into something else
No,
online?
they found the voice with animal rights. They found their voice, and then they found something easy to go to. Some human supremacist movement, whatever it is, whether you're anti-woke or you're woke, and you start appealing to these people, to me, all you want is admiration for yourself. It's about your ego. I talked about that badge that people wear with their burnout badge for their ego. It's the same thing. It's just for their ego, and you'll see their online presence, their followers dramatically will grow. And maybe every once in a while they'll put a comment into something famous like the got wood milk, whatever the hell just happened. They'll
Yeah.
come in and like say a comment, but then their page will still be just about human bullshit, or human shit, I should say.
Do you believe that the people who quit activism for good, do you believe they're just doing something immoral but they're a good person, or do you believe they specifically are an immoral person?
Well, what's good, right? I mean, if you look into anybody, you're gonna find something bad that you're not gonna like, right? So again, it's the action that you're doing that's immoral. It's like I talk about the people in the zoo. They're doing something very immoral. Do they think of themselves as immoral? Of course not. They think that they're showing their children love and giving them some good values. But me and you know that they're supporting something very nasty.
But I guess would you then say it's worse in this case than the deluded sleepwalker going to the zoo, because a vegan knows very well that there's an injustice going on and they're just not doing anything about it?
Yeah, because they have the knowledge now.
So
the
would you?
Sleepwalker has no knowledge of it, and a vegan activist has had that position.
Would you go as far as to say then that they are actually more immoral than the odd sleepwalker going to the zoo?
Yeah. 100%.
This is a spicy take, and I like that you've said this. And look, people, whether you agree with what César just said or not, I just want to clarify what César said. César said a vegan who quits activism while fully aware of the injustice taking place is more immoral than just the average non-vegan going to the zoo.
Sleepwalker, because
the sleepwalker.
They are ethical. They're doing something that's ethical in their society.
Now, this is a hot take, and I'm glad that you said it. Now, whether people agree with this or not, I'm glad that there are people in this movement with opinions like César's, because we need people to get off their fucking arse. I'm sorry, but there's no excuse for what's happening. People are dropping like flies out of activism, and they're using very lame excuses, in my opinion, when I always say this. In this day and age, in the digital age, you can do activism while sitting on the toilet. So for you to actually just not, I'm not talking about taking a break. I just want to reiterate that. For you to actually just quit activism forever, I cannot fathom the level of selfishness that would actually take to literally just do nothing. You quite possibly are. There could be an argument here, going off what César has said, that someone who does that is potentially more selfish than perhaps I'm not saying a non-vegan who is just a complete dick about animal rights, but just the average kind of sleepwalker who doesn't really know or understand the injustice and doesn't really know about the immorality taking place. And I'm glad that people like César in the movement are saying stuff like this, because whether people agree with it or not, there is a problem here, and I want people to feel bad about the fact
They should, yeah.
that they've just quit. Because otherwise we get into this territory where we sound like non-vegans. You shouldn't. Why are you making people feel guilty? Why are you shaming people?
You should feel guilty. You should feel guilty.
I would feel fucking guilty if I just quit activism. I would feel very ashamed. I would feel very guilty. I'm not talking about taking a break. But it is good that we have such opinions like this in the movement. So we've just got another super chat coming here from Sherry. Thank you again for supporting my activism, Sherry. César, do you think maybe the reason why vegans are inactive is because they are not being paid for it, like Earthling Ed and Joey Carbstrong are?
Well, like I said, what motivates me is all the harm that I caused the animals in the past, and I owe it to them. I'm not looking for any money. I never put any hashtags, which was probably like not the best thing, but I want to influence people to get active. And I go out there to these festivals. There's fucking thousands of people out there, and it's just me by myself and the truth with the footage. And if I can do it, man, I'm like really, really short Mexican, man. I'm out there fucking putting in the work. If I can do it, anybody can do it. You know, that's what I want to influence. And these people who are getting paid, man, they fucking deserve it. People like them are getting other people active. You know, a lot of people like to hate because they're men, because they're white, etc. They're doing something that you don't have the courage to. How come you're not the one doing it? You'd probably be getting paid if you were doing the exact same thing they were doing.
All right, we've got another comment here. Just reiterate for Lewis Whitworth said, thoughts on Gary Yourofsky. Yeah, we just discussed that about 5-10 minutes ago, Lewis. So César said, yes, even if you're Gary. But I think, César, your position on Gary was you still think he probably is doing activism in some way, even if it's low key, right?
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps. Maybe he just wants to be out of, I don't know. I don't know him very much, and an activist never made me vegan. You know, I wish somebody would have told me something, but I never knew there was a vegan movement before. I chose to leave animals alone. I didn't know that. And in fact, you know, what's funny is that before I even went out there to the streets, you know, I found carnism debunked, and I felt like that shit got me ready. I found like the list of excuses, the ones that you wrote up, man, that helped me out a lot. And then I started finding out there's a vegan movement. And I actually saw somebody do a cube in Hawaii, posted about it, and I was like, damn, she's out there doing this no matter what people may say about her, and here, like, I'm gonna do it too. And that's what inspires people. If you post online, you make it normal to speak up against the injustice.
That's awesome, man. I didn't know that Carnism Debunked had such an impact on your activism. So when did you come across the site?
I want to say like around maybe 2018, and I didn't know like it was you. Like I didn't even know about you till much later. And this was just a website that somebody posted on a vegan group.
Awesome, that's good. Yeah, because I built the website in 2017, so you saw it in its early days and stuff. So that's good, man. Yeah. And what you were vegan at the time when you saw it?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And yeah, well, it's good to know that helped you get active. Just seeing the excuses and stuff being answered. We got another question here from Reasonable Vegan. Hey, Reasonable Vegan. He says, can you watch a movie once a week? Or is that 2 hours wasted when you could have been focusing on animals until you sleep every day?
Do what you want, man. Just be active for the animals.
I guess the point he's making
I
is
get
it
it.
immoral that you're using those 2 hours to
Right.
like sit on your ass and watch a movie and have fun when you could instead be doing
Right.
activism?
I know where he's going. I've seen some of his videos, and I know what he's going for. You shouldn't be using 100% of your time. I cleared it up earlier. You shouldn't be using 100% of your free time that you volunteer for the animals, because that will burn you out, and that's what we're talking about. We want to avoid that shit. So if you're gonna use something to distract yourself, I'd rather be a movie than some fucking drugs, to numb yourself. If you're gonna numb yourself, do it with a movie. That's fine, man. You have the right to enjoy your privilege of being a human, right? Because if you don't, then you're gonna want to feel like you don't fit in with humans no more, or whatever your silly excuses not to get active for the animals, and then you're no good for the animals no more. So if you need to watch your little movies, watch your little movies.
It's yeah, I think that I think there's a good point to be made there. Part of building a strong justice movement is not only focusing and working for the oppressed, but also a bit of self-care where it matters. Of course, we need to take care of ourselves as well as the victims we're fighting for. Would you say, going off that, César? Now, obviously, both you and I agree that it's a moral obligation to be vegan, right? I mean, I think any vegan would be crazy not to think that. Of course, it's a moral obligation just to not slit others' throats, not to gas others, not to rape others. Of course, that's a moral obligation. That's not like some massively virtuous thing. Would you say activism is a moral obligation? By moral obligation, I just want to clarify for anyone who's unsure, that just means the basic thing you need to be doing in order to just be a morally neutral, just a decent person, not even like an amazing person, just like, yeah, he's all right. He does activism. Do you think that it's a moral obligation to be active or just to be vegan?
No, it's a moral obligation again because this is an extreme injustice. If it was just an injustice to where people are being racist, you don't have to say that. Say, oh, this guy or whatever, whatever the message is right now. But this, what we're dealing with the animal global holocaust, yeah, that's a fucking extreme injustice. I'll keep repeating it again. It's ethical to do that in this society, and it's up to us to change it. If not us, people who have that knowledge, then what are you doing with that knowledge? You're just keeping it to yourself. That's the same thing with the activists. They have the knowledge. They can debunk all these silly excuses, but then they keep them to themselves.
So for you, it's a case of, okay, let me put you in a different situation that's not our own. Now, because for you, what I gather is it seems to be this kind of sliding scale. It's like some types of activism are moral virtues, some things are moral obligations. It depends on the scale of the atrocity that's taking place, right? And the animal holocaust being by far the biggest one, just engulfs all the others. This now makes it a moral obligation to be active.
Yeah,
what about?
Say it's a virtue.
Yeah. Okay. What about if you're living in a country with like horrific human rights injustices going on? So we're not talking about, where we have it pretty easy, like places like the UK and America. Let's say you're living in like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Somalia. There's people being like acid attacked. There's people in the police just standing by and watching because, they didn't have their like arranged marriage or something like that. Do you think that it would be a moral obligation to be an activist against that in those societies, or would that just be a moral virtue? Obviously, we can agree it's a moral obligation not to do those things, but to be active against those things in those countries, would that be an obligation or just a virtue?
Depends. Is being an activist for the animals going to get you killed?
No, in most cases, no.
Then it is. It is an obligation for you to be having the word out there. And I'm sure we can find some pretty based people who are in some terrible locations of the earth who are doing activism for the animals.
Yeah.
Are you just to say, like, if they're being presented with those human injustices themselves, then they have that moral obligation to speak up for themselves as well.
But but with regards to the stuff like the acid attacks on little girls and stuff in Pakistan, would you say that it's for those people who are living in Pakistan who are against that, would you say that it's a moral obligation to speak out against that happening?
Against acid?
Yeah, acid attacks and human rights injustices in there.
Right. Just because I'm speciesist towards human injustices, like in America, doesn't mean that like you shouldn't be speaking up against that. Like you should be speaking up against that and the animals because they have it even worse. I don't think I answered your question. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so for someone living in a country where severe human rights injustices such as that are taking place, would you say it's a moral obligation for people in those countries to be active against those human rights injustices?
Against those human, you're right. Yes, they should.
In that case, why would it not be a moral obligation for me and you to speak out against something happening in Saudi Arabia or Pakistan?
Like you should, because the hypothetical you put is somebody living there. You're not living
I
there.
know. But I'm now just pressing you a bit more because you said, yes, it would be in those countries. But now I want to just press you a bit more and say, well, what if you're not living in that country, but that stuff is still happening in those other countries?
Why shouldn't I be speaking up against that, you mean?
Why is it not your moral obligation to speak up against acid attacks in Pakistan?
That's a great question. And I mean, I don't really know how to answer you. I think it's fucked up for anybody to hurt anybody, right? So who deserves moral protection? The little kids, the little girls. I think those people are so fucked. And that's what us animal rights people are trying to do: make the world kinder. How are we going to expect them to respect other humans?
Yeah. I guess the reason I'm asking you this and the reason I'm pressing you on this is because this could be a counter argument from vegans who have quit activism. They could just fire back at you, César, and say, well, if you think I'm immoral for not being active for the animals, if you think it's some moral obligation to not just be vegan, but just to be active for the animals, why are you not immoral, César, for not doing activism over the acid attacks in Pakistan? Like, what would you say if someone presented you with that argument?
So those vegans who quit, they're now no longer doing either. So who are they? Who are they now, you know?
Yeah, of course. But, all right, what if one was to say, well, actually, now I am doing a human rights. We pick our own battles, César, and now I am an activist for women's rights in Saudi Arabia. Why aren't you, César, immoral for not speaking out about this?
I'd ask them what kind of activism they're doing. Are they just what are they doing?
Posting online, writing like into the Saudi embassy. Maybe they go to the Saudi embassy in like America, whatever, and stand outside with pickets and stuff, saying like, "Give women the right to do this" or something like that.
Yeah, good for them. You know, good for them. But for the vegans out there watching this, we need everybody to speak up for the animals. You know, if you want to speak up for human injustice, that's fine and dandy. But we need you to be a voice for the animals because those people that you are there outside with the embassy. They are actually oppressors too, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones abusing the most defenseless animals out there.
Yeah, with animal rights, it's like a double oppression because even the oppressed oppress them. It's crazy what's low. Even if you're fighting for the women who are being oppressed in Saudi Arabia, those women who are being oppressed in Saudi Arabia are oppressing animals. Like, this is how oppressed animals are.
Well, hang on. I was talking more about the people who are speaking up against their oppression, the people who want them to be respected. They're actually doing something very immoral themselves.
Because
right?
because they're demanding rights for themselves that they're not willing to extend to others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there some kind of threshold you would say? What I'm trying to get at is, if a vegan quits animal rights activism, is there some sort of threshold where they're so active in another human injustice that you would no longer, César, say that this person is immoral? Like, let's say I quit activism today, César, animal rights activism. So I completely throw in the towel on animal rights. And now I'm just fully going for it on like a human injustice. I'm not going to do this, by the way, so feel free to be as savage with your answer as you want. Would I be immoral now, César, even though I'm really fighting for this other human injustice, but I'm just not doing anything for animals anymore.
Yes, because it happens all the time. People gravitate towards human injustices, and they shut their mouth about the global holocaust of animals.
Yeah. And I guess it makes it even more unfair, doesn't it? Because it's like they've quit on the animals to focus on the people. As fucked up as it is that these things are happening to other humans, it's like they've quit on the animals to now focus on the people who are oppressing animals.
Right. And if you try to, like, I think I commented back on one of your posts recently how these people who move to the human injustice causes, they'll never bring up the animals in those circles either. They'll never bring them up, and they'll tell you it's not the right time and not the right place. Whenever the message is perfectly aligned with, hey, the oppressor is fucked up, stop doing that.
There's a good comment here from Stacey, because we're talking about this whole, we're getting a bit philosophical now, and we're talking about amount of people doing something, and is there a threshold that makes it an obligation or a virtue, whatever. Stacey says 99% of the population is not throwing acid on other people, and people have basic rights and their own voices. So it is not a moral obligation for us to stand up against it. Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess it's it could be seen by many people, such as Trash Carcass Stacey there, as it not being a moral obligation to speak out against that, when so many people are against that anyway, and we see this as one of the evils in the world. Whereas with the animal holocaust,
everybody's doing it.
Everyone's doing it, and it's just and the animals only have just a tiny number of people in the world who need to speak out, and most people who are vegan are not even activists. In fact, most people who say they're vegan aren't even fucking vegan.
Yeah.
Let's put that out there. I mean, go in your local vegan group on Facebook, and it's pure cancer in there. Just look at the comments and the posts in that group and those groups, right? So let's just clarify that for a start. So this is what the animals are left with, right? They're left with just a tiny group of people who are not oppressing them. But even those group of people who are not oppressing them, most people in that are not even speaking out against it. So what on earth are they? So I to be honest, I am quite convinced, César, about your point. We're coming towards the end of the stream now, and I just want to summarise my points. So for anyone who's thinking they wanted to hear my points towards the end and whether you've persuaded me of this point or not. I can't currently see any kind of counter argument as to why quitting activism would not be immoral. People are free to comment, by the way, and if they want to change me and César's minds on this, if you're in the comments here on the live and you want to chime in with something as to why you think, well, it's bad, but I wouldn't call it immoral, please do say something. But so far, I'm just not being convinced by a counter argument. When the scale of this injustice is so gigantic, when the number of people fighting for these animals is so tiny, so microscopic, I can't see this as anything other than a moral bad to just quit on them like this. Did you want to add anything to what I've just said there, César?
Yeah, our fight is about justice. Just because you abstain from what society's doing, that doesn't make you just. You need to help animals. You need to help them because everybody's doing it. So that will make you just. That would make you a just person. Like I said, if you quit activism, you're immoral. If you're not angry, you are immoral as well, because justice seeks for the good.
Explain that. Why, if someone is not angry, are they immoral? I like that point, but explain why you think that.
Right, because like I said, society, people think of all these people, all these leaders as good people. And even though they're sleepwalkers, they may not know they're doing evil. They're not. They're pieces of shit to the animals, right? These animals are trembling in the slaughterhouse. If you've ever had to do bear witness to the animals, these animals are trembling. And then you there as an activist, somebody who has empathy, you feel like you can't do anything. And then you look around your groups, your Facebook groups, your whatever local vegan group. None of them are out there with you, and they don't want to be out there. They don't want to be out there. They want to be safe, which is what these activists want. They just want safety. They want to fit in again with their human supremacist buddies. And, you know, while I was just thinking about this, I thought of somebody who used to be like, I never, I'm not going to name him, of course, but he used to make a lot of posts about animal rights, and he was very based. And I'm only bringing him up because he followed me recently, like about a couple months ago, which I have no idea why he followed me, but I never unfriended him or nothing. But now he spends his time, like his whole fucking life, arguing against veganism, how vegans are so fucked. And to me, that's the same thing. Like an ex-vegan is the same thing as like an ex-activist. Like they're choosing to be with the oppressor. Like simple as that. They're choosing to be with the oppressor. That's the action that they've taken. When you choose to be silent, you've chosen to be with the oppressor now.
Now, that statement there, that might be something that people might say, well, hold on, Caesar, there you might have gone too far. So you would compare
They're doing the same thing.
Activists to ex-vegan. Yes. You would say the ex-vegan is still morally worse, right? Because they're technically buying
of course,
the product. But you still think they're kind of...
They're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They're doing the same step down. So if you think about Miley Cyrus, right? I don't follow celebrities, but this was a very popular story. She stopped being vegan, and she said, you know, I've saved 40 animals in my ranch, right? How many vegans can say that they personally saved and they care and they look out and they spend their money towards animals? And now she's back to eating these animals, right? That's an ex-vegan right there. Because people, like a lot of people like to say there's no such thing as an ex-vegan. There's such thing as an ex-activist for the same reason. They go back into that darkness. They go back into that conformity with people, with society.
What would you say to anyone watching right now who says the reason I've had to quit activism is because I just can't take it anymore, my mental health, I want to be active, but I just cannot be because of too much trauma and mental health problems that I've suffered?
The same thing that I said earlier, you know, find something that brings you joy. And you're responsible for getting better. Why do you want to be shelled up? Why don't you want to be better? Wait. And I did say, you know, you have to find your strengths and weaknesses. Maybe that whatever you were doing was burning you out. Find another way.
And I just want to add to that as well, like we said at the start of the stream, there are so many ways to be active, and we're not activism shaming here when we say that all of these forms of activism where you don't even have to move at all, these are valid forms of activism. You can literally do activism in your living room. So I just want to say to anyone who might have joined the stream late or anything like that, who is just thinking that César maybe is talking about people who have just like quit their outreach group or is no longer doing protests or something like that, or is no longer doing like restaurant disruptions and stuff like that. We're not just talking about those things. We're talking about literally anything. We're talking about people who will no longer even sign petitions. We're talking about people who will no longer put a sticker on something, who will no longer post a Facebook status or make a fucking meme or post like a 20-second video on TikTok just screen recording Gary Yourofsky's speech. These are all very valid forms of activism that you don't need to be even mentally fit in order to do. Anyone can do this, even if you have suffered trauma, even if you have depression or anxiety, whatever it is. These are all totally valid forms of activism that you can get involved in just from sitting in your living room. We're not shaming those forms of activism. César, we're coming towards the end of the stream now. We're going to call it quits at about an hour. So I guess I'll get you to just make one closing statement, if you want, as to why vegans who quit activism are immoral.
Well, just look at any kind of quote out there for anybody who's worked against injustice. Like I said, that Martin Luther King quote. You look at any other Martin Luther King quotes against injustice, the indifference is just as bad. You're now. The quote says, "We won't remember the words of our enemies, but we will remember the silence of our friends." You chosen to be the animals' friends? Be their friend. Speak up.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that, César. Very important quote there to end with. And guys, I know this is a heated topic, and some people who are watching the stream might be upset with certain things that I've said, or think that, César was too harsh or something like that in his opinions. But it's good that we have such voices as César in the movement, because if we don't have people like César in the movement, whether you agree with what he said or not, imagine the apathy, imagine the sheer apathy and the level of laziness that we would see in the movement if we didn't have vegans who were just going to grab other vegans by the scruff of their necks and say, you haven't got an excuse, get off your ass, get out there and speak for the animals. So I want to say, whether you agree with what César said or not in this live stream, I hope you at least appreciate where he's coming from. He's not saying this to be a dick. He's saying this because he cares about the level of injustice that's going on, and he's angry, and we're angry, and we're angry about what's happening. So thank you everyone for watching. César, if you just want to stay in the room for a sec and we'll just have a post chat, but everyone else, thank you so much for joining, and we really hope that you've taken inspiration from today's chat. So thank you.